recent webinar, Brian Dawson from CloudBees pointed out that the real unicorn in continuous delivery process is the ability to deliver software changes to stakeholders in any environment. And this includes software changes continuously deployed to production. Let's go ahead and take a look at our continuous delivery process that we have going on. Typically, on the development side, we have our agile development, which we have smaller incremental changes that are occurring. Those incremental changes are then checked into Git, for example, which kicks off our continuous integration process. Our continuous integration process does the compile, creating our binaries, and then that gives the developers something to test in their development environment. Once the developers are happy with what they have as far as their changes, then they need to go ahead and get those changes out to the stakeholders in any of the environments. So they need to deliver those changes once they're happy out to QA, UAT, or a production-like environment. And those changes should be delivered automatically after the developers are ready to go. So that process of continuous delivery is an automatic process. The problem is the developers, when they do this, are not able to create a repeatable or standardized process that enables live production updates. Instead, we get this staging area that happens for production. And then there's a turnover, which the operations or production control then pulls those developer changes into the live production environment. So that we have this breakdown because of the staging area, and it's typically around the scripts that the developers have created to work in their environment. But those scripts do not adapt well to production. So let's look at a continuous delivery process that is usually set up using those scripted deployments. The scripting comes into play around the package and deploy. As you know, most applications are no longer just a single executable or binary. There's many different moving pieces that need to be packaged together. Developers will script that using some sort of archiving such as zip or a war or ear as part of their process, or creating an RPM to create the package that they need. So that's scripted, and then the deployment process is also scripted utilizing something like an SCP command or SSH to hit the target environment. The problem is the scripts that the developers were writing for their part of the pipeline do not adapt to QA, and then QA has to modify them, make them work for QA. And again, operations or production control are going to have their own scripts. So across this whole pipeline, we have a disjointed process. Nothing is repeatable, nothing is standardized, and that's causing staging to occur and production control pulling changes from staging instead of the continuous delivery pipeline automatically moving them from development all the way out to production seamlessly. So let's look at how to achieve continuous deployment using open source tools. DeployHub is an open source ARA solution, application release automation tool. If you look at the whole pipeline here, we have issue tracking that's open source, such as Bugzilla. We have Git for version control. We have Jenkins for the continuous integration and build, Selenium for continuous testing, and DeployHub to fit into the missing piece, which is the continuous deployment part of the puzzle. DeployHub, because it's open source, allows project teams an alternative to those heavy enterprise level application release automation tools. They can go ahead and implement this at the project level, creating a standardized and repeatable process from development through the other stages of the pipeline into live production. So let's take a look at what happens with the pipeline now that DeployHub's in place. DeployHub is going to create the standardized and repeatable process around the package and deploy. Because it's standardized and repeatable, we are able to move up and down the pipeline very easily. So we can go from development to QA to production seamlessly. If we look at some of the DeployHub market recognition, Gartner has recognized in the Magic Quadrant and critical capabilities for the application release automation space that DeployHub has strong integrations with Jenkins and Ansible, making it a compelling option for those looking to extend those tools. Also recognized by SD Times as a DevOps leadership and vision category. So how do we get beyond where we are today and look at application release automation overall? If you look at some of our competitors, they're going to be approaching the process from the operations standpoint, and they're going to try to sell one tool for everybody. That's going to be purchased by the operations side, and it's going to be implemented by operations, which means the developers are not going to have any input into taking that tool down into their CI/CD process. Our competitors are cost way beyond a single project team. Because they're enterprise level and one tool for everybody, a single team can't afford it. So instead, the DeployHub is a very low cost solution. We have a SaaS version that's available. It would be $25 per month for an application for the open source. An application is typically a collection of components or binaries that you want to deliver as a single package. Basically equates to an application team, development team. So that's $25 per month for the open source, $80 for the pro, and then on-premise we have the $6,000 for 10 applications, and then $23,000 for 50 applications. Enterprise level over 50 applications, we do have that available as well. All these include support and maintenance as part of the subscriptions. What you get with the pro versus the open source, the continuous feedback loop is extended out to track code commits, so we know exactly which files have changed as part of the deployment, tracking those from the developer all the way out to the endpoint where that coding change was made. Also, we have smart calendars in the pro version, which enables us to control the pipeline from a calendaring perspective. So instead of having to change a pipeline project, like in Jenkins, going and modifying a Jenkins file for a testing period, DeployHub just enables you to go ahead and put a calendar entry out there that says, I'm doing testing, and when you restrict the calendar to that faction, the pipeline is notified of those restrictions. Also, we have release train coordination, which enables us to take multiple applications together, coordinate those to be deployed as a single unit as well. And then also the pro version has additional security groups and domain hierarchies that cater towards the enterprise level project teams. Also, we have change request integration into Jira, Bugzilla, GitHub, issue tracking, those types of external tools where we're able to link together more information from into the feedback loop, enabling us to do change request burnout rates and additional release planning. Come out and join the community for the open source. Just go to deployhub.org. The project is hosted on GitHub as well, and there's a full community out there that involves the Google groups, Slack channels, issue tracking, and all the source code for the DeployHub open source. What we've recognized as Agile DevOps is the practice of shifting more operational responsibilities left to the developers. The lion's share of this work is specifically around software deployments. DeployHub facilitates this shifting by providing developers and operational teams a centralized tool for collaboration, transparency, and trust. We're first going to show you how a developer declares their application to be deployed using DeployHub. Here we have the components that are assigned to the application. We have a Postgres component, Java component, a database component, which is our SQL that we're going to use to update our database, our application Tomcat, and finally our application, which is our WAR file that's going to run inside of Tomcat. These two first components, the Postgres and the Java, are going to be installed using Ansible. Ansible handles the infrastructure layer for DeployHub. We bring in the Ansible Galaxy roles, which provides over 3,500 roles that can be utilized as part of DeployHub for infrastructure layer configuration and installation. Also at this layer, at this level, we have application attributes. These attributes are assigned at the application layer. They are available as part of the deployment process. Also, we have the environments in which the application is going to be deployed to. Here, we're going to be able to deploy to development, testing, and integration. Also, we'll see which version is currently deployed at those stages of the pipeline. Let's go back to our components. We'll take a deeper dive into the components. So each component is going to have a component type. Here we have our database component, and it is a component type of Postgres, DDL, and SQL. If we look at the component items, we can see we have the roll forward and the roll back. So here's our roll forward, which is going to add, I believe, a column to our table, and then our roll back is actually going to remove that column from our table. So the roll forward and roll back allow us to incrementally roll a database through the version tree. If we look at one of our other components, for our web application, we'll see that this one's slightly different. This is where we're going to be deploying our WAR file, and we're going to be pulling this from our Jenkins repository. You'll see here a component type for our WAR files, an application file. The component type allows us to map which components go to which endpoints. We'll take a look at our data center here, and we'll look at our environments and endpoints. So today we're going to be working with our deployments to the IT guys development, integration, testing, and production environments. Each environment has its own calendar. As you can see in development, we had backups that ran yesterday, so we had that blocked out. If we look at the integration testing, we can see that we have a totally different calendar. One of the things that we can do with calendars is, like I said, create events that allow us to make a calendar unavailable, reserve it, or auto deploy. This capability allows us to move through the pipeline without having to update the Jenkins file as part of the process. All we do is go ahead and create an event saying this is blocked out, and we're able to keep from making coding changes as part of the process. Within the environments, we're going to have our endpoints. In this case, we have two endpoints for development. We have our mainframe and our Linux box. So we're going to be going to our Linux box. This will actually be provisioned if needed as part of our deployment process. Environments can have, and endpoints can have attributes. So if you look at the attributes for the endpoint, we can see we have our Postgres information. If we go up to the environment level, we have information about which servers we're going to be provisioning through AWS. Now that we've declared our application and assigned our environments, we'll step out of DeployHub and see how it works using the Jenkins Blue Ocean Pipeline. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pipeline itself. We have the DeployHub library that we're importing. From there, we instantiate a new DeployHub object. And then as part of our deployment process here, we're actually going to be approving the application and then moving the application. That movement is going to be from development to integration. And then finally, we're going to be deploying the application. Now, this is going to happen for each stage of the pipeline. So if we go to our pipeline here, and let's go ahead and run our pipeline. Normally, this pipeline is going to be kicked off after the developers have decided that they have a release candidate that needs to go to integration. Once the integration has been completed, we actually will go ahead and move to testing and then production. As part of our pipeline process, like I said, we have the approval, and then we have the move from development to integration, the deployment to integration, and then we are going to run test cases. If those test cases are successful, then we'll move to the next stage of the pipeline. From here, we can see the deployment log directly from within Jenkins. So we have that two-way integration between Jenkins and DeployHub. Again, the test cases we ran, they were successful, and because of that, we went to the next stage of the pipeline. So if we look at testing, we did the similar process. We moved from integration to testing. We then went and deployed to testing our application version, and we have our deployment log here, and we can see we went and did our deployment, and then we ran additional test cases. In this case, we ran 20 test cases for the testing stage of the pipeline. Finally, we went out to production, and we're just waiting for the production deployment to finish here. And the same process will occur where we have the deployment to production. There are no test cases associated with the production, so we just had the deployment log as part of this process. So if you actually take a look at our application here, this is what it looked like in development. Our version 3 that we've been working with, that got promoted through our pipeline out to production. So let's go ahead and refresh production. Now we can see that production is being refreshed, and we have the same version that's in development. Now, one of the things we could do is go ahead and go directly to DeployHub. If we click and refresh our application, our pipeline here, we could see in version 3 has been installed into production. We are actually going to go ahead and right click, and we're going to roll back to version 2. So all I have to do is go ahead and pick the version I want to roll back to and choose the environment. So I'm going to go ahead and redeploy version 2 back to production. So we're going to do a rollback of production now. We'll look at our timeline here. We can see that we're doing a rollback. We've altered our table, and now you can see that we've restarted our application server. So let's go ahead and check production again, refresh it, and we'll see that we've rolled back to version 2. And here we have version 2. Now let's go look at what it takes to integrate DeployHub with Jenkins. To do that, we simply run the Jenkins setup wizard. And this Jenkins setup wizard asks a few questions: the repository name, the environment, the endpoint, the build engine, which application and components we're working with, and credentials that we need to connect to the repository and endpoints. So here I'm going to pick which domain I'm going to work with. I'm going to work with my pipeline domain, the owner. I'll just leave the default. And then my Jenkins URL. My project name. And what we're creating. We're creating itguys.war. Hit next. Where we're going to deploy this to, I'm going to deploy it to IT. And this is going to be a Unix machine, and I'm going to connect using FTP, and I'll just put it into temp IT guys directory. Put in my credentials. And click finish. And this has gone and generated all the information on the DeployHub side about our deployment process. Now, all we need to do is to update the Jenkins plugin with this information. And we'll take a look at one that I've already done. So we're going to go back to the native Jenkins, get out of Blue Ocean here, and we'll look at our IT guys here. And if we configure our project, we will see the base information that's needed for doing the deployment from Jenkins using the DeployHub plugin. So our credentials to log into DeployHub, which application and target environment we're going to be working with, and then information about what attributes we want to save as part of this process. So we're going to save the Jenkins build number, we're going to pass along the get URL and get commit, and which components that this build job is actually going to create. That's all we have to do, is to give this information, and DeployHub and Jenkins are linked together, enabling a two-way process where Jenkins will get information from DeployHub and DeployHub will get information from Jenkins. So if you'd like some more information, go ahead and go out to deployhub.org or openmakesoftware.com. Also, you can just email me at steve.taylor@openmakesoftware or give me a call. Thank you very much.